Have you ever heard the story of the Nostromo? It was an industrial freighter whose unsanctioned pit stop on an uncharted alien planet resulted in the ship's self-destruction and the deaths of nearly its entire crew. They say only one survivor managed to escape the carnage, carrying with her the memories of a terrible curse. Of course, this is the plot to the 1979 space horror film Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. One of the most famous horror movies of all time, Alien was a pioneering film from its strongly written female protagonist to its usage of claustrophobic cinematography and environments to provoke and shock audiences with the unexpected and unknown. The striking visual designs of the film, from its archaic and desolate landscapes and corridors to the creature design of the titular monster itself, also help play into the movie's horror roots. But I think the greatest attribute to Alien, and why it's one of my favorite movies, is its lasting impact through which it tells its terrifying and horrific story. Alien has often been remarked as featuring tropes akin to those seen in slasher films, but to me, I think it has just as much in common with a different type of horror tale, the ghost story. In this Alien Day-inspired video, we'll look at the foundations of the original Alien and how its individual components line up with the traditional ghost story of modern folklore. Without further ado, let's begin. The Curse of LV-426 begins not with Ellen Ripley, the crew of the Nostromo, or even Ridley Scott himself, but of a man named Montague Rhodes James. M.R. James, as he published work under, was an early 20th century author noted primarily for his works involving the medieval age and biblical apocrypha, but also, most famously, his ghost stories. James is often considered the pioneer of the modern age ghost story, with his works noted for their focus on the human condition and the hidden horror beneath surface level detail. James's first story, Canon Alberich's Scrapbook, is a shockingly strong early example of the types of stories he would write. A man discovers an ancient book of scripture during a tenure in the Pyrenees Mountains, and through arrogant disregard for its spiritual holder's warnings, encounters a demonic creature from beyond his wildest imagination. It's a story entrenched in realistic detail. James describes the characters with rich attention to their mannerisms, detailing our protagonist as a somewhat pompously boastful individual, unaware of the underlying danger in his study of choice. The verger of the church he chooses to study is described with a distinct paranoia around him, seeping into the reader themselves with a grim curiosity as to what it is that frightens him. This underlying paranoia is ever present in the story from the moment the accursed book has revealed to our protagonist. From then on, James cranks up the terror more and more until he unleashes a vivid and wild description of the demonic force from which our protagonist calls forth. James's first story was relayed to a group of friends at a fireside party during the Christmas season. It was a resounding hit, and James would continue to write more and more tales that intersected with his studies of religious history and medieval times. In the continuation of his brilliant literary craft, James concocted other macabre tales like Lost Hearts, O Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad, Count Magnus, and Casting the Runes, which would famously serve as the basis for the 1957 British horror film Night of the Demon. The success of James's work can partially be contributed to his own personal set of rules he crafted in order to divide his own works from the Gothic-inspired tales of the past. It's this set of rules that I think can be used as an interesting parallel to the story of Alien. In two non-prose works by James, An Introduction to Ghosts and Marvels, a collection of short-form ghost stories, and Some Remarks on Ghost Stories, an article in the December 1929 issue of the Bookman magazine, James described his ideal qualifications for a successful ghost story. First, a ghost story must deal with the ordinary. The characters must be perceived in a way that fleshes them out as regular individuals, not just formless characters in a fictional setting. Only by establishing the central characters in this way can the juxtaposition of the supernatural have its intended effect. In James's own words, let us see the characters going about their ordinary business, undisturbed by forebodings, and into this calm environment, let the ominous thing put out its head. Secondly, the setting must be contemporary for the reader. James surmises that a degree of distance between the audience's time and the story's time will make for an incompatible work. The seer of ghosts must talk something like me and be dressed, if not in my fashion, yet not too much like a man in a pageant, if he is to enlist my sympathy. Third, a delicate balance of detail. James's article admonishes the then-current trend of explicit content in ghost stories, be it sex or violence. Reticence, he states, conduces to effect. Blatancy ruins it. To James, a modicum of blood shed with deliberation is enough to frighten. Fourth, no explanations. Simple and sweet, the exploration of the horror's origins or its motivations will, according to James, undo its malice and terror. The greatest successes have been scored by the authors who can make us envisage a definitive time and place, and give us plenty of clear-cut and matter-of-fact detail, but who, when the climax is reached, allow us to be just a little in the dark as to the working of the machinery. We do not want to see the bones of their theory about the supernatural. Finally, James insists on the author's commitment to the factual nature of their stories. Very nearly all the ghost stories of old times claim to be true narratives of remarkable occurrences, begins his 1929 article. James implies that the tried and true, only a dream/rational explanation story to be antithetical to the genre's origins in ancient storytelling. It's through these 5 criteria that the Jamesian subgenre of ghost story has evolved, taking its name from the way in which stories under this banner are influenced by the author's works and their specific tones and style. This, also, is the way in which I believe Alien fits in. Its base-level story works as a contemporary evolution, you could say, of the early 19th century ghost story. Alien begins with a panning shot of the vastness of space. To some, this might be seen as breaking James's rule of a relatable time and place, but space itself is not what we identify with here, but the Nostromo, a commercial towing vehicle. This isn't the vessel of a group of intergalactic heroes or the space station of a crew of astronauts and super scientists, but a normal group of blue-collar workers. It just so happens that their job requirement includes floating through space. Alien's beginning act also focuses on another of James's rules, the establishment of normality. The various traveling shots of the corridors on board the Nostromo familiarize us to the spaceship's interior during normal operations. The crew awakening from stasis and then following up with a casual breakfast full of everyone talking calmly among themselves strengthens our belief of them as average Joes. The world they inhabit isn't sparkly clean, it's lived in and worn. Things have visible age and use. One other aspect of the film that ties into both this idea of established normality and the contemporary adherence James suggests is the technology. It's strange to say on paper, but looking at the various machines and equipment in the film, we see a lot of then modern design philosophies in electronics. CRT monitors, beige-colored keyboards, and monochromatic terminals dominate the ship's interior. The displays on each screen flicker with low-quality pixels. Despite occurring hundreds of years into the future, this is very much a 1979-looking film. Even down to the clothes the characters wear, this film still manages to provide a futuristic setting, but with the look of contemporary society. No virtual reality, holograms, or touchscreens. This is an analog future. The second the Nostromo crew is informed of the intercepted transmission, this is the minute the ghost story elements of the film fully come into play. Even ignoring the Jamesian lens with which we're viewing the film, the descent on the LV-426 echoes traditional ghost story elements, namely the ill-advised descent into the unknown. The uncharted alien world becomes the film's first haunted house, the setting in which the supernatural enters itself into the protagonists' lives. The world of LV-426 is hostile, almost as if warning the crew, daring them, to take the risk in exploring it. The derelict ship is steeped in classic Jamesian horror, namely the fact that its existence, its inhabitants, and its cargo all go unexplained. Hints are offered, but the further the crew begins to investigate the ship, the more things seem to be treading dangerous waters. As James says, the ominous begins to put out its head. Kane's infection is the beginning of the end for the Nostromo crew. The organism attaching itself to his face sort of breaks with James's distaste in the more explicit nature of earlier ghost stories, but the sexual nature of the monster and alien is often one of the film's most well-researched themes. It'd be difficult to write an essay about the film without bringing it up. But even though its explicit nature is against the Jamesian style, the film still manages to keep it subtle and leveled enough that it doesn't drive into exploitation territory. With Kane brought on board, facehugger in tow, and Ash defying Ripley's explicit orders to quarantine the infected man, immediately we begin the second act of our ghost story. The curse has been disturbed and begins haunting its future victims. I probably should spend some time discussing the visual design of the alien organism in the film and how its designer, Swiss artist H.R. Giger, blended elements of humanity with mechanical effects and natural creatures to create the beast in its various stages of life. Giger's work, specifically the painting Necronom 4, were the basis for not only the alien's design, but the entire world it inhabited. His biomechanical imagery blended the industrial familiarity of the Nostromo's crew with the hostile, unknown environment of LV-426. Though they may feature small elements taken from animals, environments, and organisms that we know of, the final results are something truly, well, alien. After Kane's overnight stay in the medical room, things surprisingly return to normalcy. But this is a facade the film places on its viewers, fully intent on letting their guard down. Suddenly, the curse rears its head once more, and with it, first blood has been spilled, or rather, sprayed all over the mess hall. The chestburster scene is famous for its shock value and twist. We again get a small snippet of normality with our characters, before the film yanks us right back into the horror. The scene is one of few in the film with a good amount of bloodshed, but it doesn't go far enough that I feel it breaks James's rule of a delicate balance. Shots of blood spraying from Kane's chest are quick, splatters on the wall are out of focus. The film doesn't dwell on the gore of the situation, even as the creature emerges. It's dripped in blood, but we're mostly supposed to be shocked at the small creature's existence rather than its gory method of birth. From here on out, the film immediately switches tones, hovering much more prominently over the horror area than the more sci-fi inspired mystery of the first act. As the crew searches for the juvenile alien, the environments we were introduced to at the start immediately begin taking on a more sinister presence. With the creature's small stature, we start to fear that it could be anywhere on the screen, as we're watching the characters talk about where to find it. One of the most memorable small details in the film is the ship's pet cat, Jonesy. Jonesy mostly takes the form of a fake-out scare, such as the scene where Ripley, Parker, and Brett believe him to be the juvenile alien. But when viewing the film through the lens of a ghost story, Jonesy takes on another role that connects well to modern ghost folklore. It's often a trope in horror fiction that animals can sense the supernatural, and Jonesy is a perfect microcosm of that in Alien. When Brett goes after Jonesy to make sure he doesn't encounter the alien, he finds the cat cowering in a corner, afraid of something. Indeed, Jonesy immediately begins hissing and backing away, with this scene marking the first full appearance of the adult alien. The adult alien, referred to behind the scenes by the affectionate nickname Big Chap, is a grandiose, elegant, and beautifully terrifying creation. From its Giger-born biomechanical makeup to its eerie performance by Nigerian actor Bolaji Badejo, the creature broke the mold not only for science fiction cinema, but all of monster and horror fiction. Its gait, mannerisms, and emotive capabilities all evoke humanity in a familiar and uncanny manner. Like the most classic iconography of the ghost or spirit, the alien's humanity seems in some way to be a snapshot of its past life, eking through its monstrous facade. The alien's attack on Brett is almost supernatural. The framing itself invokes a dissonance with the viewer and the film's space. The alien descends from seemingly thin air and appears to hover behind Brett, much like a ghost would. When Brett faces the creature head-on, we only receive vague, shadowed images of his face and the alien's, before quick jump cuts imply his untimely demise. With Brett now the curse's second victim, tensions inside the Nostromo shift into high gear. Ship Captain Dallas leads a charge into the ventilation systems to destroy the creature, a maneuver that, in turn, also results in the beast claiming another soul. Dallas's pursuit of the alien also plays into the visual discomfort with the claustrophobic ducts and the alien's unexplained ability to appear and disappear without explanation, much like a specter. At this point, half of the Nostromo's crew have been killed. The new commander of the survivors, Ripley, calm but shaken, orders that the alien hunt continues. Further fulfilling her new role, she speaks with the ship's supercomputer Mother, much like Dallas had earlier in the film. Unlike Dallas, Ripley's interaction with Mother reveals the awful truth of their pit stop. It was entirely planned by the company they work for, fully intent on discovering the alien organism and bringing it back to Earth, complete with a manifesto that the crew are completely expendable in the process. As she is shocked by this horrifying revelation, Science Officer Ash sneaks in behind her unknowingly. Ash has been a constant thread throughout the film at this point, serving as a narrative device to provide exposition, but also as a foil to Ripley. He is the one who ignores her orders and lets the infected Kane on board, and is also the one to initially claim the signal from LV-426 as a distress call, not a warning as it's later discovered. His entire character has been seeped in mystery and unease, and it's this scuffle with Ripley that fully reveals his true role. Ash is a robot, yes, everyone knows this, but more than that. He's the secondary antagonist of the film, and himself another aggressor of the LV-426 curse. Ash's initial actions towards the defiant and hysterical Ripley seem inhuman. The shots focusing on his facial expressions, his lack of dialogue, all play into his later android revelation, but they also can be seen as evoking the typical traits of a ghost story classic, the possession. Ash's actions are at odds with his character, and it isn't until the alien is on board, and likewise the curse itself, that he begins to change into his antagonistic role. This eventually comes to a head when he tries to suffocate Ripley, who is saved by Parker and Lambert. With Ash thrust off his victim, he begins acting wildly frantic, making exasperated and bizarre noises, all while spitting an indistinct liquid from his mouth. I don't think I really need to point out the similarities here to popular depictions of possession, do I? The paranormal fiction similarities do not stop there, though, as the following scene of the remaining crew communing with the disembodied head of Ash can be likened to that of a seance, especially Ripley beginning the conversation with the typical "can you hear me" line. As Ash gives his meaningless sympathies to the survivors, the film's final act shifts the focus from confronting the alien to escaping it. The Nostromo has taken on the role from LV-426 as the haunted house the protagonists must abandon. Unfortunately, in the desperate rush to escape the ship before it's destroyed, both Parker and Lambert are killed by the alien. Parker's death continues the trend of quick-shot, rapid-fire violence with minimal bloodshed and close-up shots messing with audience perception. But Lambert's death is special. The nature of it ties back into James's theory of a modicum of detail, in this case, of a sexual nature. The way the alien's tail curls around Lambert's leg and the off-screen manner in which she is murdered implies a far more graphic fate for her than any other character in the film. As Parker and Lambert fall victim to LV-426's curse, Ripley is fully enshrined as the film's lone survivor, the final girl. Much has been written about Ripley's role as a feminist icon as the sole survivor, namely her steadfast and intelligent demeanor throughout the film's runtime, so I won't spend too much time discussing it. Needless to say, Ripley stands as one of cinema's greatest female protagonists, and, along with Laurie Strode, the progenitor of a new type of female genre hero. The intense, heart-pounding finale of Alien is ripe with fantastic scenes of terror. Ripley's isolation from any sort of humanity, the pounding siren cascading through the halls of the ship, the flashing lights illuminating her and the aliens' faces in short bursts, the Nostromo almost comes to life with the amount of action, energy, and motion it displays while counting down to self-destruction, contrasting with the serene calmness displayed in the opening act. As Ripley scrambles into the escape shuttle and launches away from the impending explosion, it appears her struggle is over. Ripley, it seems, is finally safe. Until she isn't. One last scare for the trip home as the alien is on board, hiding in plain sight among the escape craft's mechanical detailing. Ripley has evaded the Star Beast for nearly the film's entire runtime, but now, at the tail end, she has come face to face with the haunting reality that she is complicit in its curse. She dons a spacesuit and secures a grappling hook in a desperate attempt to save herself. The shuttle's serenity is disrupted as Ripley draws the alien out of its hiding spot. Steam sprays, sirens blare, and the alien erupts in a chorus of inhuman chirps, cries, and screams. With no other options and the beast slowly descending upon her, she hits a switch and blasts open the airlock. Thrust out into space, the alien is essentially exorcised from Ripley, floating helplessly through space before it's burned to a crisp by the shuttle's engines. Engines, I should point out, that emit a bright, almost biblically and heavenly white light. And with that, Ripley's terror is over. Now, she can rest. Whether you view it as a spacefaring slasher or an underlying supernatural parable to the tales of legendary authors such as M.R. James, Alien undoubtedly remains one of the greatest horror tales of all time. Its utilization of all different types of elements, tropes, techniques, and crafts, from all sorts of genres, media types, and artistic styles, help to embody it into what I would personally call a perfect film. I think viewing it through the lens of a 20th century ghost story is another way to breathe some life into the abundance of discussion surrounding this film. Regardless if you feel the connection is versatile, I hope this video at least gave you something new to think about regarding this cinematic classic. Happy Alien Day, everyone.